Hi, welcome to 3.2 evaluating functions. So we'll start off with the notes up top. So it'll just be fill in the blank. So functions can be represented by an equation or rule. The equations will generate output values by taking an input that results in a certain output. The graph of an equation is set of all its ordered pairs, which can visually show the rule for a certain function. An example of a function, so you may have seen something like this. When you put an x value into a function, an equation, what you're doing is simplifying. You're going to get the y value. You're going to understand what the y value is for a certain x value. So the x value is called the input, and the input is the independent variable, because you pick it. It's independent of anything. It doesn't depend on anything. It doesn't rely on anything. The y value is called the output, and it depends on what you put into the input. That depends. So then it'd be the y, what the y value is. So it's a dependent value because it's the value that would depend on the value of the x. So let's get started here. So we are given the function and domain. Find the range. So we want to find the range given the function and the domain. So the range is the y value. The domain is your x value. So what we're going to do is we're going to say x is equal to 4 right away. And we're going to substitute 4 in for x. Remember, when you're substituting, put parentheses around what you substitute, always. Then we're going to simplify this. 4 minus 5 is -1. So on my range, because range is your output, your input, you inputted 4 for x. Your output is -1, which is your range, your y. Y is -1. We're now going to put in x equals 6 into the original equation. 6 minus 5 is 1. So now we're going to put 1 in our range. And now we'll do x equals 8. So x equals 8 minus 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. Whoa. And there we go. There's our range, -1, 1, 3. That correspond with our domain, our 3 values that we substituted in for domain. So it just so happened that the numbers were from least to greatest, and they did not repeat, so I just wrote them down. But you should always look to see of your range or your domain that they do not repeat. If they repeat, you just write them once, and you should always write them from smallest number to biggest. So -1, 1, 3. All right, number 2. So domain, again, it's asking for domain. So x equals, not 0, -1 first. We're going to substitute that in. Y equals 3 times -1 plus 1. And that's -2. And then our next domain is going to be x equals 0. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. We're going to put in x equals 1 to the original equation. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. And the last. So x is going to equal 4. So we have y equals 3 times 4 plus 1. That's 12 plus 1. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So looking at my our range here, the smallest number of the y values is -2. So -2. Then we have 1, 4, and 13. And there's our range. All right, looking at the next problem. Again, we're given our domain, so I'm going to start off with x equals -10. So we have y equals 3/5 times negative 10, put in parentheses, negative 3/5 times it. So parentheses are absolutely needed when you are multiplying or dividing. We're multiplying fractions here, so we're going to multiply the numerators, negative 30, multiply your denominators, 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 30 divided by 5 is negative 6. And negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Now let's do our next. When the domain is 0. What is our y value, our range, going to be when our domain is 0? 3/5 times 0, anything times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. And the last, x equals 5. Now we multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Y equals 5. So our range is, so looking at our numbers, our range, our smallest number is negative 4, then it's 2, then it's 5. Looking at the next, we have our domain is negative 2. We're going to start with that. So now be very careful. This is another time where you absolutely need to put parentheses around when you substitute. If you always do it, you'll never be wrong. Negative 2 squared. Anything squared is always positive. 4 minus 4 is 0. So let's substitute negative 1 in. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Minus 4 is negative 3. Let's substitute 0 in. 0 squared minus 4. 0 squared is 4. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. There's a lot to substitute in here. 1 squared minus 4. 1 squared is 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And the last, and x is going to equal 2. So y equals 2 squared minus 4. 2 squared is 4, minus 4 is 0. So let's take a look at our range, our y values that were given from our domain. What is the smallest number? That's negative 4. Then negative 3, there's 2 of them, so we're just going to write one of them. And then it's 0. We have 2 of them, so we're just going to write 1. Do not repeat, and there's your range. On the back, number 5. So for square roots, so domain again is x, so we're going to substitute x equals negative 2 in. Y equals negative 2 plus 3. Negative 2 plus 3, you simplify underneath the square root. It's 1. The square root of 1, what two numbers multiply to equal 1? Well, that's 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Now let's substitute x equals 6 in. So y equals 6 plus 3. 6 plus 3 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. And the last is x equals 13. Thirteen plus 3 is 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So our range, the y values that are given from our domains, is 1, 3, and 4. That's the order, least to greatest. All right, next domain, we have x equals negative 2. Substitute it in. Negative 2 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Absolute value of negative 7 is 7. And it's multiplied, so 2 times 7 is 14. We have our next domain, x equals negative 1. So y equals 2 times negative 1 minus 5. Y equals 2. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. Absolute value of negative 6 is 6, and the 2 is attached to the absolute value by multiplication. So it's 2 times 6 is 12. Let's keep going. X is going to equal 1. One minus 5 is negative 4. Absolute value of negative 4 is always the distance from 0, which is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And lastly, x is going to equal 2. So we have y equals 2 times 2 minus 5. Kind of ran a room. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So our range is 6, 8, 12, 14. And that will be good enough, and I'll make another video for